My mother announced I needed to move out right as her knife sliced the Christmas turkey, seemingly forgetting that every cent of that mortgage came from my account. Something inside me snapped. She had no idea that before I left, I planted a truth bomb that would shatter her victim narrative weeks later. If you paid the bills for 12 months only to be evicted over dinner, would you open the door when she returned? My name is Marley Rhodes, and up until precisely 6:14 in the evening on December 25th, I labored under the delusion that I was the head of this household. I was 28 years old, a senior cybersecurity analyst at Northbridge Dynamics, and I had spent the last year treating my bank account like a community chest for the people sitting around me. The setting could not have been more picture-perfect if it were a scene from a holiday greeting card. We lived in Maple Ridge, a snowy, upscale suburb of Colorado where the winters were harsh, but the houses were built to keep the cold at bay. Outside, the wind was howling against the siding, whipping the fresh powder into drifts against the porch I had paid to have repainted 3 months ago. Inside, however, the dining room was bathed in the amber glow of the chandelier. The Christmas tree in the corner was a 7-foot spruce, decorated with heirloom ornaments and twinkling white lights that reflected softly against the window pane. The air was thick and heavy with the scent of roasted turkey, sage stuffing, and the sharp, sugary tang of cinnamon from the yams. It smelled like safety. It smelled like home. I sat at the head of the table. That position was not an accident, nor was it an ego trip. It was simply the logistics of a family where the father was gone and the eldest daughter had stepped in to fill the financial void. My mother, Lorraine, sat to my right. She was currently focused on carving the 20-pound bird that had cost me $80 at the organic butcher in town. To my left sat my Aunt Carla, my mother's sister, who was already on her 3rd glass of Chardonnay and talking loudly about her neighbor's divorce. Across from me sat my younger sister, Jenna. She was 21, home from college for the break, and she was aggressively staring at her empty plate, refusing to make eye contact with anyone. I should have noticed that detail earlier. In my line of work, we look for anomalies. We look for patterns that break the standard baseline of behavior. Jenna was usually the loud one, the one stealing bites of stuffing before grace was said, the one taking selfies with the wine glasses. Tonight, she was a statue. But I missed it. I was too busy feeling a quiet sense of pride. I looked at the spread of food, the warmth of the room, and I felt good. I had kept this ship afloat. I had paid the mortgage. I had paid the heating bill that kept us warm. I had bought the gifts that were currently stacked under the tree. I reached for the gravy boat. It was heavy, silver-plated ceramic, filled with a rich, dark sauce that smelled of thyme and pan drippings. "Does anyone want gravy?" I asked, lifting the boat. My mother stopped carving. She did not look up. She kept her eyes on the knife in her hand, watching as it sliced through the crispy, golden skin of the turkey breast. "You need to move out, Marley," she said. Her tone was casual. It was the same tone one might use to say, "Pass the salt," or "It looks like snow tomorrow." My hand froze in midair. The tilt of the gravy boat remained fixed, but the liquid inside obeyed the laws of physics. A stream of hot brown gravy spilled over the lip, missing my plate entirely and pooling onto the white lace tablecloth. It spread like a dark oil spill, ruining the fabric. But I could not bring myself to right the vessel. I just stared at the stain, watching the steam rise from the cloth. The silence that descended on the room was absolute. The clinking of Aunt Carla's fork against her teeth stopped abruptly. The ambient hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen seemed to vanish. The only sound I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears, a high-pitched frequency that signaled a system error in my brain. Jenna did not look up. She shrank further into her chair, her shoulders hunched up toward her ears. Carla, however, did not look away. She lowered her wine glass slowly, her eyes darting between me and my mother with a look of hungry anticipation. It was the look of someone watching a reality television finale, waiting for the slap. I carefully set the gravy boat down. The china made a sharp clatter against the table. I wiped a droplet of sauce from my thumb with a napkin. I forced my breathing to remain even. In my job at Northbridge, panic is the enemy. When a server is breached, you do not scream. You assess the damage. You isolate the variable. Really? I said. That was the only word I could manage. It hung in the air, flat and unemotional. But inside my head, a very different conversation was screaming to get out. My mind, trained to organize and analyze data, immediately pulled up a mental spreadsheet. I saw the rows and columns clearly. Mortgage payment, $2,450, paid on the first of the month by Marley Rhodes. Electricity and gas, $380, paid on the 15th by Marley Rhodes. Water and sewage, $90, paid by Marley Rhodes. Internet and cable package, $160, specifically upgraded because Mom wanted the premium movie channels, paid by Marley Rhodes. Groceries for this specific meal, $400, paid by Marley Rhodes. The list scrolled down my vision like code on a terminal. I had drained my savings account to zero to pay off the arrears on this house when I moved back in. I had decimated my own financial stability to ensure Lorraine did not lose this roof over her head. And now, as she sliced a piece of white meat and placed it on her plate, she was evicting me. Lorraine finally looked at me. She let out a long, dramatic sigh, the kind that suggested she was the one carrying the weight of the world, not the one being supported by it. "Oh, Marley, don't look at me like that," she said, her voice trembling slightly with a rehearsed fragility. "It is just time. You are almost 30. You need to learn to be independent. You need to learn how to stand on your own 2 feet." I blinked. The audacity of the statement was so immense it was almost physical. It felt like a punch to the solar plexus. Learn to be independent? I had been living on my own since I was 22. I had only come back here because she called me, sobbing into the phone, begging for help because the bank was threatening foreclosure. "Independent?" I repeated, my voice dropping an octave. "Yes," Lorraine continued, gaining confidence now that she had broken the ice. She gestured vaguely with the carving knife. "Having you here, it is stressful. Marley, you take up so much space. The energy in the house is just very heavy when you are around. You are always on that computer, or worrying about bills. It makes the house feel tense. Jenna feels it too. Don't you, Jenna?" She turned to my sister for backup. Jenna flinched. She stared at her mashed potatoes as if they contained the secrets of the universe. "I just think maybe it is better if we have our own space," Jenna mumbled, her voice barely a whisper. She sounded like she was reading from a script she had been forced to memorize. I looked at Carla. My aunt pursed her lips and nodded sagely, swirling the wine in her glass. "Your mother is right, honey," Carla said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "A young woman like you should be out exploring the world, not cooped up here with us old folks. It is not healthy. You are stifling the family dynamic." Stifling the family dynamic. The phrase hit me with the force of a revelation. I looked around the table, really looking at them for the first time in months. Lorraine, with her fresh manicure, that I knew cost $60 because I saw the charge on the joint credit card. Jenna, wearing the new sweater I had bought her for her birthday 2 weeks ago. Carla, drinking the wine I had selected. They were not surprised. None of them were shocked by this announcement. There was no gasping. No Lorraine. "What are you saying?" They knew. They had discussed this. They had planned this. While I was working 12-hour shifts at Northbridge to make sure the direct deposit hit in time for the mortgage auto draft. They had been talking about how to get rid of me. I was the bank, and the bank had served its purpose. Now that the accounts were current and the pantry was full, the ATM was no longer needed in the living room. It was taking up too much space. I looked at Jenna again. The guilt radiating off her was palpable. She knew this was happening tonight. She knew that while I was basting the turkey and setting the table, I was preparing my own farewell dinner. That was why she couldn't look me in the eye. I looked at Lorraine. She was waiting for me to explode. I could see it in the way she held her jaw, slightly tight. She wanted me to scream. She wanted me to throw the wine glass against the wall. She wanted me to call her ungrateful. Because if I screamed, if I acted crazy, then I became the villain. I became the unstable daughter who had to be asked to leave for the safety and peace of the family. She was building a narrative, and she needed me to provide the climax. "You need to move out." The words echoed in the silence. I slowly picked up my napkin. I folded it, corner to corner, neat, precise. I placed it on the table, next to the spreading pool of gravy. I did not scream. I did not cry. I did not list the $28,000 I had poured into this house over the last 11 months. Instead, I felt something click inside my chest. It was a mechanical sound, like a lock engaging. The part of me that was a daughter, the part that craved their approval, the part that wanted to save them, died in that chair, in its place. Something cold and purely logical booted up. If they wanted me to be a stranger, I would be a stranger. And strangers do not pay mortgages. Strangers do not protect you from the consequences of your own financial illiteracy. I looked straight into Lorraine's eyes. She blinked, unsettled by my lack of volume. I smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was a very small, very slight curvature of the lips. It was the smile of a chess player who sees mate in 5 moves, while the opponent is still celebrating taking a pawn. "Really?" I said again, soft and smooth. Lorraine hesitated. She didn't know how to handle the quiet. "Well, yes," she stammered slightly. "Ideally by the 1st of January, to start the year fresh." "Okay," I said. The word hung there, simple and terrifyingly agreeable. "Okay?" Lorraine asked, frowning. "Okay," I repeated. I pushed my chair back. The legs scraped against the hardwood floor. The floor I had spent a weekend polishing on my hands and knees 3 months ago. I stood up. I looked down at the feast I had provided, at the family that had consumed me, and I felt a strange, light sensation. It was the feeling of a burden being cut loose. They thought they were kicking me out. They had no idea they were setting me free. And they certainly had no idea that the house of cards they were sitting in was entirely structural dependent on the person they just evicted. I turned and walked toward the stairs, leaving the warm glow of the dining room behind me, my shadow stretching long and dark across the table. The game had started, and it was my turn to move, to understand the magnitude of what I lost the moment I agreed to return to Maple Ridge. You have to understand where I was exactly 365 days prior. I was living in a studio apartment in downtown Riverbend, a space that was entirely, unapologetically mine. It was not a large space. In fact, if you stretched out your arms, you could almost touch both walls of the living area. But it was a sanctuary. I had chosen it for the exposed brick wall on the east side and the massive industrial window that flooded the room with pale, unfiltered light every morning at 7. I remember those mornings with a physical ache. I would wake up without an alarm, the silence of the apartment wrapping around me like a protective blanket. There was no shouting, no passive-aggressive slamming of cabinet doors, no heavy sighs designed to guilt anyone within earshot. There was just the hum of the city waking up below and the hiss of my kettle boiling. I had a ritual. I would grind coffee beans, a dark roast I splurged on from a local roastery, and prepare a pour-over. I watched the water bloom over the grounds, counting the seconds, controlling the variable. Then I would sit at the table I had restored myself. It was an old oak dining table I found at a flea market, covered in scratches and water rings. I had spent 3 weekends in a row on my balcony, sanding it down by hand until the wood was raw and smooth, then staining it a deep walnut. Every time I ran my hand over that surface, I felt a surge of pride. I fixed it. I made it work. It was a metaphor for the life I was building. My laptop would be open, the screen glowing with lines of code and security logs from Northbridge Dynamics. I loved my job for the very reason my mother hated it. It was cold. Hard logic. In cybersecurity, a breach is a breach. A firewall is either up or it is down. There is no nuance, no emotional blackmail, no rewriting history to make yourself look like the victim. If there is a vulnerability, you patch it. If there is an intruder, you lock them out. It was a clean world, and I was good at it. I was making good money, enough to pay my rent, my student loans, and still put a decent chunk into a high-yield savings account every month. Paying bills was not a source of anxiety for me. It was a source of empowerment. I would click submit payment on my electric bill and feel a rush of dopamine. I was taking care of myself. I owed nothing to anyone. I had made a vow to myself shortly after my father died 2 years ago. I stood at his graveside, watching the rain darken the earth, and promised that I would never live under Lorraine's roof again. That house in Maple Ridge was not a home to me. It was a museum of arguments. Every room held an echo of my parents fighting, usually about money, usually initiated by my mother's inability to distinguish between a want and a need. When Dad died, the buffer was gone. I knew that if I stayed, I would become the new target for her chaos. So I ran. I built my fortress in Riverbend, and for a year, I was safe. Then came the Tuesday night in early November. I was curled up on my velvet armchair, reading a book, a glass of wine resting on the side table. My phone buzzed on the cushion beside me. The screen lit up with the word, Mom. I almost didn't answer. I stared at it, feeling that familiar tightening in my chest, a physiological reaction Pavlov would have found fascinating. But I was a good daughter. That was my fatal flaw. I was the responsible one, the one who fixed things. So I slid my thumb across the screen. Hello? Marley? Her voice was small, trembling, stripped of its usual performative confidence. In the background, I could hear the rhythmic, violent thumping of the old washing machine in the basement of the Maple Ridge house. It was a sound from my childhood, a mechanical heartbeat that signaled the machine was off balance and about to fail. What is wrong? I asked, sitting up, my book forgotten. I don't know what to do, she whispered. I just opened the mail. I haven't been opening it for a while. Marley, I was too scared. My stomach dropped. What is in the mail, Mom? The bank, she sobbed. They sent a notice, a red one. They say I am 3 months behind. They are talking about foreclosure proceedings. Marley, they want to take the house. I closed my eyes, pinching the bridge of my nose. 3 months? How did you let it get to 3 months without telling anyone? I thought I could catch up, she wailed. But the heating bill went up, and then the car needed tires, and, oh God, Marley, they are going to turn off the electricity on Friday. I have $40 in my checking account. I did the math instantly. It wasn't just a few $100s. We were talking about thousands to bring the mortgage current, plus the late fees, plus the utilities. Mom, I started, trying to keep my voice steady. You need to sell. You can't afford that place alone. We talked about this after Dad died. No! The word was a shriek. I can't lose this house. It is all I have left of him. And then she deployed the weapon she knew would pierce my armor. Marley, she said, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. I was just standing in the kitchen doorway. You know the frame? Where your father used to mark your height? I was looking at the mark from when you were 10. It is still there. If we lose the house, the new owners will just paint over it. They will paint over his handwriting. I gripped the phone tighter. I could see that pencil mark. I could remember the feeling of the wood against my heels. My father's warm hand resting flat on my head. His laugh as he told me I was growing like a weed. And his coat, she continued, relentless. His old flannel jacket is still in the hall closet. I buried my face in it today. It still smells like him. It smells like sawdust and that peppermint soap he used. If I have to move, I don't think I can survive packing it up. It would kill me. Marley, it would actually kill me. Silence stretched between us, filled only by the aggressive thumping of the washing machine miles away. She was asking me to save a shrine, not a house. While she cried softly on the line, my phone vibrated with a text message. It was from Jenna. Mom is freaking out. She called me crying. Please tell me you can fix this. I am barely making rent with my waitress job, and I still owe $2,000 for tuition next semester. I can't drop out. Marley, you are the only one who can save us. The pressure was physical, like a vice clamping down on my skull. The only one. That was the title I had worn since I was 12 years old. The fixer, the adult in the room. I told my mother I would call her back. I needed to think. 10 minutes later, Aunt Carla called. She didn't cry. She used a different tactic. Excessive flattery wrapped in obligation. "Marley, sweetheart," Carla cooed. "I know this is hard, but you have always been the strong one. You are so successful now, with your big city job. Your father was so proud of how smart you were with money. He always said, 'Marley will look after them.' He trusted you." She paused, letting the ghost of my father do the heavy lifting. "If you just went home for a little while," Carla suggested, her voice light, as if she were suggesting a vacation. "Just to get the accounts in order, just to help Lorraine get back on her feet. A few months, maybe. You could work from there, couldn't you? It would save the family." I hung up the phone and stood in the center of my studio. The room was dark now, the city lights casting long, geometric shadows across the floor I kept so clean. I looked at the lease agreement sitting on my desk. I had renewed it 2 months ago. I walked over to the desk and ran my finger down the paper until I found the section on early termination. Tenant must provide 30 days' notice and pay a penalty equivalent to 2 months of rent. 2 months of rent. It was a lot of money, but it was quantifiable. It was a fixed number. I looked at the plants on my windowsill, a snake plant, and a pothos I had managed to keep alive for a year. I looked at the coffee maker. I looked at the peace and quiet I had fought so hard to obtain. I knew, logically, that going back was a mistake. My brain screamed that it was a regression, a security vulnerability that I was voluntarily opening, but my heart was betraying me. The image of strangers painting over my father's handwriting, of my mother shivering in the dark because the power was cut, of Jenna dropping out of college because I refused to help. It was too much. I picked up the pen. I didn't sign a check to the bank. Instead, I circled the clause on my lease. I convinced myself it was a temporary deployment, a rescue mission. I would go in, stabilize the asset, and extract myself. I told myself I was strong enough to handle Lorraine now. I told myself I was returning as an adult, an equal, not a child. I was wrong. As I stood there in my perfect, quiet apartment, I didn't realize that I wasn't just breaking a lease. I was signing away my freedom. I was trading my sanctuary for a battlefield where the enemy knew all my passcodes. The sound of packing tape tearing off the roll is a sound I will associate with surrender for the rest of my life. It is a harsh, ripping noise, violent and final. That weekend, my apartment in downtown Riverbend transformed from a home into a pile of cardboard boxes. I moved with a mechanical efficiency that masked the nausea churning in my stomach. I took down the abstract prints I had bought from a local artist, wrapping them in bubble wrap until they looked like ghosts. I dismantled the oak table I had sanded with my own hands, unscrewing the legs and feeling the weight of the wood as a physical reminder of the independence I was dismantling. I paid the landlord a penalty of $3,200 to break my lease. Handing over that check felt like paying a ransom for my own captivity. I told myself it was just money. I told myself that family was an investment that did not show up on a balance sheet. I lied to myself repeatedly, reciting the plan like a mantra. 3 months, maybe 4, just until Mom gets a job, just until the arrears are cleared. By Sunday evening, my life was packed into the back of a rental truck. I drove 45 minutes to Maple Ridge, watching the city skyline shrink in my rearview mirror until it was swallowed by the dark tree line of the suburbs. When I pulled into the driveway of the house on Elm Street, my heart sank. The house, a 2-story colonial that had once been the pride of the neighborhood, looked tired. It looked like a person who had stopped grooming themselves. The gutters were choked with dead leaves, a task my father used to do every autumn with religious punctuality. The paint on the porch railing was peeling in long, white strips, revealing the gray, weathered wood underneath. The front lawn was overgrown, the grass patchy and brown. But when I walked through the front door, the narrative shifted. Lorraine had clearly staged the interior. The house was warm, almost stiflingly so. There were candles burning on the mantelpiece. scenting the air with vanilla to cover the underlying smell of dust and old timber. She had draped blankets over the worn spots on the sofa. It was a carefully curated tableau of genteel poverty. It said, "We are struggling, but we are still a family." The moment I stepped across the threshold, dropping my keys in the bowl, the ambush began. "You are here." Lorraine came rushing out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron. She looked thinner than I remembered, her face pale and drawn without makeup. She threw her arms around me, burying her face in my neck. She was shaking. "Oh, thank God," she sobbed into my coat. "Thank God you are here. Marley, you are my saving angel. I didn't know how I was going to make it through another week. I was so scared." I stood stiffly for a moment, the cold air from outside still clinging to my clothes, before my arms instinctively came up to pat her back. It was a reflex. Comforting her was a muscle memory I had developed over 2 decades. "It is okay, Mom," I said, my voice sounding hollow to my own ears. "I am here. We will fix it." Jenna came down the stairs, looking genuinely relieved. She didn't hug me with the same theatricality as Mom, but she squeezed my arm. "Thanks, Mar," she whispered. "Seriously, I was freaking out about tuition." "I know," I said. "Don't worry about school. Focus on your grades. I will handle the finances." Then came Aunt Carla, who had apparently come over to witness the return of the prodigal daughter. She was sitting in Dad's old armchair, a glass of red wine in her hand. She beamed at me, raising her glass in a toast. "Look at you," Carla said, her voice thick with approval. "You are the spitting image of your father right now, standing there, taking charge. He would be so proud of you. Marley, you are the glue holding this whole thing together, just like he was." That comparison was the hook that snagged me. They knew that my greatest weakness was my desire to live up to the memory of the man who had actually raised me. By equating my sacrifice with his legacy, they ensured I wouldn't complain. The next morning, the reality of the rescue mission set in. I sat at the kitchen table, which was covered in a chaotic spread of envelopes. Some were unopened. Others had been ripped open and then ignored. The red warning notices from the bank were right on top. I pulled out my laptop and logged into my bank account. I watched the number in my savings, a number I had spent 5 years building, drop by $14,000 in a single click. That was the cost to bring the mortgage current and pay the penalties. "There," I said, turning the screen so Lorraine could see the confirmation. "The foreclosure is stopped. You are safe." Lorraine let out a long breath, pressing her hand to her chest. "Oh, thank you. I feel like I can breathe for the first time in months." Then, she slid a stack of other papers across the table. They were utility bills, electricity, gas, water, internet. "Marley, honey," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "since you are going to be handling the payments for a while, do you think we could switch these into your name?" I frowned, looking up from my screen. "Why? I can just pay them from my account. The name on the bill doesn't matter." "It does," she insisted, wringing her hands. "My credit score took a huge hit when I missed those payments. The electric company is asking for a huge deposit to keep the power on because I am a high-risk customer now. But if we switch it to you, you have perfect credit. It would save us hundreds of dollars in deposits, just for now, just until I get back on my feet." It made logical sense. In the world of finance, bad credit is expensive. Using my good credit to avoid fees was an efficient move. "Fine," I said, reaching for the forms. "I will call them today." I signed the papers. I transferred the electricity. I transferred the gas. I transferred the internet. I effectively legally bound myself to the infrastructure of the house. I did it quickly, between sips of coffee, treating it like just another administrative task at work. I did not read the fine print about cancellation fees or contract lengths. I trusted her. She was my mother. She was drowning, and I was the lifeguard. You don't ask the drowning victim to sign a waiver. That night, I went up to my old bedroom. It was exactly as I had left it at 18, which was the problem. The wallpaper was a hideous floral pattern, faded pink roses on a cream background that I had begged to change when I was 16. The single bed felt impossibly narrow after sleeping on a queen for years. The floorboards creaked in the exact spot I remembered. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling. The silence of the suburbs was different from the silence of my apartment. It was heavier. It felt expectant. "It is just for a few months," I whispered to the empty room. "By spring, she will have a job. I will help her budget. I will move back to the city." I needed to clear some space in the closet for my work clothes. My mother had been using my room as an overflow storage space since I left. The closet floor was piled high with boxes of old decorations, winter coats, and miscellaneous junk. I knelt down and started shifting boxes. Trying to create a corner for my blazers, I pulled out a large cardboard box that was taped shut. It felt light. Assuming it was old ornaments, I grabbed a pair of scissors and sliced the tape. It wasn't ornaments, it was a shoebox. But inside, there were no shoes. It was filled with crumpled paper. I frowned and picked up a handful. They were receipts. I smoothed one out. It was from the Golden Lotus Spa. Date: October 14th. Service: deluxe hot stone massage and facial. Total: $240. I blinked. October 14th. That was 2 weeks before she called me crying about the electricity being cut off. I dug deeper. Receipt: Chez Henri, November 2nd. Items: filet mignon, bottle of Cabernet, tiramisu, total $180. November 2nd. That was 3 days before she told me she had $40 in her checking account. I sat back on my heels, holding a receipt from a high-end department store for a bottle of anti-aging serum that cost $95. My heart did a strange stutter step. Why were these here? Why were they hidden in a taped box in the back of my closet? My brain, trained to find logical explanations, immediately went into overdrive to defend her. Maybe these aren't hers. I thought, maybe she went with a friend who paid, and she just kept the receipt? No, that makes no sense. Maybe she treated herself one last time before the money really ran out? People do irrational things when they are stressed. Maybe she bought these things on a credit card she hasn't told me about yet. The image of her sobbing in the kitchen, wearing that worn-out apron, clashed violently with the image of her eating filet mignon while the bank was printing foreclosure notices. I looked at the receipts again. There were dozens of them. A slow, cold, creeping sensation started at the base of my neck. But then I heard her voice from downstairs. She was humming. It was a song she used to sing when I was a child. The sound was so fragile, so familiar. I shoved the receipts back into the box. I taped it shut. I pushed it to the very back of the closet, behind a stack of old quilts. I couldn't look at it. If I looked at it, if I acknowledged what those numbers meant, then my sacrifice was not noble. If those receipts meant what I thought they meant, then I wasn't a savior. I was a mark. And I could not handle being a mark on my first night home. So I chose the lie. I stood up, brushed the dust off my knees, and went to sleep in the bed that was too small for me. Telling myself that everyone copes with grief and poverty in different ways, I decided to believe that the math was just complicated. I didn't know yet that the math was perfectly simple. I was just the only one in the house who wasn't solving for X, where X was how much they could extract from Marley before she noticed. The transition from emergency rescue mission to permanent sponsorship did not happen with a bang. It happened with the slow, suffocating inevitability of rising damp. For the first 4 weeks, there was a performance of gratitude. Every time I paid a bill, Lorraine would sigh with relief and tell me I was a saint. She would make me coffee in the morning. She would leave little notes on the fridge saying thank you, but by month 3, the notes stopped. By month 5, the gratitude had evaporated, replaced by a terrifying sense of entitlement. The bills were no longer requests. They were administrative notifications. I would come home from a 10-hour shift fighting off DDoS attacks at Northbridge to find the utility statements stacked neatly on my placemat at the dining table. There was no discussion. It was simply understood that I would log in, enter my routing number, and make the problem go away. The costs were escalating. The grocery bill, which had been a modest $400 a month when I moved in, ballooned to $800. I noticed premium brands appearing in the pantry, imported cheeses, organic wines, expensive cuts of steak. When I pointed this out, Lorraine waved a hand dismissively and said that since we were eating in more to save money, we deserved better quality ingredients. The logic was circular and impenetrable. I tried to pivot the conversation to her employment search. That was, after all, the condition of my return. "How are the applications going?" I asked one Tuesday evening, as I stood over the sink scrubbing a lasagna pan that had been soaking for 2 days. Lorraine was on the sofa, scrolling through her iPad. She didn't look up. "Oh, Marley, it is hopeless. I looked at Indeed today. Everyone wants someone 20 years younger. Who is going to hire a 55-year-old woman with a gap in her resume? It is age discrimination, plain and simple." "There are remote customer service jobs," I suggested, scrubbing harder at a stubborn spot of burnt cheese. "I could help you update your profile." "I can't sit in a chair for 8 hours, she snapped, her voice taking on a sharp, defensive edge. "You know about my sciatica. My back has been killing me all week. The stress makes it worse. I can barely walk to the mailbox without pain." I might have believed her if I hadn't opened Facebook on my lunch break that very afternoon. I had seen a check-in from Aunt Carla. Girls' day out at the vineyard. The photo showed Lorraine and Carla standing on a patio, holding wine glasses, looking radiant and notably pain-free. Lorraine was wearing high heels. You do not wear 3-inch heels when you can barely walk to the mailbox. I swallowed the accusation. I told myself she needed a break. I told myself morale was important. Then Jenna joined the payroll. It started with small things. "Marley, can you Venmo me $50 for textbooks?" Then it became, "My laptop crashed, and I have a final project due. I can't fail this class." I bought the laptop. $2,100. I sent it overnight shipping. 2 weeks later, Lorraine cornered me while I was making coffee. "Jenna wants to come home for spring break," she said, her eyes wide and pleading. "She misses us, but the flights are so expensive right now. $600. "Mom," I said, leaning against the counter, exhaustion settling into my bones. "I just bought her a computer. I am paying the mortgage. I am paying for your health insurance. I can't just conjure $600 out of thin air." Lorraine's face crumpled. "She is your sister, Marley. She is alone out there. You make so much money at that tech company. What is $600 to you? You are so lucky to be successful. Don't be stingy with family." Stingy. The word felt like a slap. I was bleeding cash. My savings account, which used to be my pride, was now a source of daily nausea. But the narrative had shifted. My salary was no longer my salary. It was the family's resource, and I was just the stingy gatekeeper. The domestic situation deteriorated in parallel with the finances. I was working remotely 2 days a week, but often went into the office for server maintenance. I would leave at 7 in the morning and return at 7 at night. I would walk into a house that was blazing with lights. The television would be blaring, and the kitchen would be a disaster zone. Breakfast dishes crusted with egg, lunch plates piled in the sink, spillages on the counter. "Mom," I called out one evening, staring at the wreckage. "In here," came the voice from the living room. I walked in. She was watching a reality show. "The kitchen is a mess," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "I know," she sighed, not taking her eyes off the screen. "I had such a bad flare-up today. I laid down after lunch and just couldn't get back up. You mind doing a quick load? It won't take you long. You are so fast at cleaning." I looked at her. She looked comfortable. She looked rested. I looked down at my own hands, dry from the office air, shaking slightly from caffeine and stress. "I worked 10 hours today," I said. "And I raised you for 18 years, she retorted, the guilt card deployed with sniper-like precision. "I changed your diapers. I sat up with you when you had fevers. A few dishes won't kill you, Marley." I went back to the kitchen. I did the dishes. I loaded the dishwasher with the violent, jerky movements of someone suppressing a scream. A week later, the hypocrisy reached a new peak. I was working late in my room, running a complex vulnerability scan on a client's network. My desktop tower hummed, the fans working hard to cool the processor. I had 2 monitors going. Lorraine opened my door without knocking. She stood there, arms crossed, staring at my equipment. "That thing is loud," she said. "It is a computer. Ma, it is working." "It uses a lot of electricity, doesn't it?" she asked, her eyes narrowing. "I saw the meter spinning today. You have all these screens, the lights. No wonder the bill was $300 last month. You need to be more mindful. We are on a budget." I spun my chair around. "I am paying the bill. Mom, the whole bill. And the reason it is high is because you leave the television on for 16 hours a day and keep the thermostat at 74 degrees. "I need the heat for my joints," she cried. "And the TV is for company. You are always in here with your machines. I am lonely. But sure, blame the sick old woman. Blame the mother who sacrificed everything." She stormed out. 10 minutes later, I noticed the internet speed drop. She was downstairs streaming a movie in 4K resolution on the premium tier internet package I paid $160 a month for, specifically because she claimed the standard package buffered too much. I called Aunt Carla the next day, hoping for an ally. I met her for coffee, intending to lay out the numbers. "I can't keep doing this, Carla," I said, showing her the spreadsheet on my phone. "I am down $30,000 since I moved back. She isn't looking for work. She is treating me like a husband, not a daughter." Carla sipped her latte and gave me a pitying look, but it wasn't pity for me. "Marley, honey," she said softly, "you have to understand. Your mother has been through so much. Losing your father broke her. She is fragile. You are strong. You are capable. You have that big brain and that high salary. God gave you those gifts so you could take care of the people who can't take care of themselves. I am not an endless resource," I argued. "I have my own life I want to live." "And you will," Carla assured me, patting my hand. "Eventually. But right now, this is your duty. Don't be selfish. It doesn't look good on you." Selfish. First stingy, now selfish. The walls were closing in. The breaking point, or rather, the moment the cracks became irreparable, happened on a Thursday night in November. I had come down to the kitchen at 1 a.m. to get a glass of water. The house was dark, but I saw a sliver of light under the door to the sunroom. My mother was on the phone. Her voice was low, but in the silence of the night, it carried perfectly. I stopped. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but then I heard my name. "Oh, I know. It is such a relief. Susan." She laughed. It was a bright, ugly sound. "No, I don't think she is going anywhere soon. I have her convinced the house is falling apart. She fixes everything. Honestly, it is better than when Frank was alive. Frank was always tight with the checkbook. Marley just pays it to shut me up." I stood frozen, the cold from the tile floor seeping into my bare feet. "Exactly," Lorraine said, giggling. "I told Carla, it is like we won the lottery. But the lottery lives in the guest room. We have a living ATM now, so we don't have to worry about starving." A living ATM. Not a daughter, not a savior, not a saving angel. A machine. A dispenser of cash that required occasional maintenance in the form of guilt trips and fake tears. I walked back upstairs without the water. My throat was dry as sandpaper. The next morning, I tried one last time. I didn't scream. I didn't mention the phone call. I tried to be the professional they claimed I was. I sat Lorraine down. I placed a printed budget on the table. "Mom," I said calmly, "we need to talk about a timeline. I can't support 2 households forever. I need to start saving for my own future again. I want us to set a date for you to get a part-time job, even 20 hours a week, just to cover the groceries." Lorraine stared at the paper as if it were a declaration of war. Then, her eyes filled with tears. Instant, weaponized tears. "I can't believe this," she whispered. After everything I did, I stayed in a marriage I was unhappy in for years so you could have a stable childhood. I gave up my career to nurse you when you had chickenpox. I have sacrificed my entire identity to be your mother. And now? Now you want to charge me for groceries? You want to evict me from my dignity? I am not evicting you, I said, trying to hold my ground. I am asking for partnership. You are asking for blood, she shouted, standing up and knocking the chair back. You are cold, Marley. You are cold and unfeeling, just like your father's family. You think money is everything. Well, money doesn't buy love. You can keep your spreadsheets. I am going to my room. She stormed off, slamming the door so hard the pictures on the wall rattled. I sat there at the dining table. The silence rushed back in. I opened my banking app on my phone. I stared at the balance. It was 4 digits now. Low 4 digits. A year ago, it had been a healthy 5. From the living room, I heard the television turn on. Then, I heard a laugh track. Lorraine was watching a sitcom. She wasn't crying in her room. She was watching TV, waiting for me to apologize. The sound of that canned laughter mixed with the humming of the refrigerator. I looked at the negative space on my bank statement, the white void where my savings used to be. They didn't just want my money, they wanted my life, and they were consuming it, bite by bite, while complaining about the taste. I closed the laptop. I didn't go in to apologize. For the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt something else. I felt the cold clarity of a person who finally realizes they are not fighting a war, but a parasite, and you do not negotiate with parasites. You excise them. The first snowflake of December fell on a Tuesday, bringing with it a letter that should not have existed. I retrieved the mail from the box at the end of the driveway, my boots crunching on the thin layer of ice. Most of it was junk. Flyers for holiday sales, catalogs for winter coats. But one envelope stood out. It was from a regional bank, one I did not bank with, addressed to Marley Rhodes at the Maple Ridge address. I opened it in the kitchen. The heating vent was rattling, a sound I had promised to fix that weekend. I unfolded the crisp paper, expecting a credit card offer. Instead, I read a confirmation for a personal loan application in the amount of $4,500. My stomach turned over. I had not applied for a loan. I had excellent liquidity. Despite the hemorrhage of cash into this house, I did not need a loan. I walked into the living room where Lorraine was watching a talk show. "Mom," I said, holding the paper out. "Do you know anything about this?" Lorraine glanced at the paper, then back at the TV. Then, she did a double take, her eyes widening just a fraction too much. It was a micro-expression of panic that a casual observer would have missed, but I caught it. "What is that?" she asked, her voice pitching up. "It is a loan confirmation," I said, keeping my voice flat. "Using my name, using this address." Lorraine waved her hand dismissively, though her fingers were trembling slightly as she reached for her tea. "Oh, that... I think I saw something about a system error on the news. Banks are having glitches all the time now. It is probably just a mix-up. You know how technology is. Marley, you work with computers. They make mistakes." "Identity verification isn't usually a glitch," I countered. "I need to call them." "No," she said, too quickly. She cleared her throat, forcing a smile. "I mean, don't waste your time sitting on hold for 3 hours. Just shred it. If you didn't sign anything, it is not real. Listen, forget about bills for a second. We need to talk about Christmas. I want this year to be huge. I want a 12-foot tree. I want to invite the whole family. We need some joy in this house." She was pivoting. It was a classic deflection tactic. Create a new, shiny object to distract from the anomaly. "A 12-foot tree costs $300, I noted. "And it will be worth every penny for the memories," she beamed, effectively ending the conversation about the loan. I didn't call the bank immediately. I should have. But a part of me, the part that was tired of fighting, wanted to believe it was a mistake. I filed the letter in my desk, marking it as suspicious item number 1. Item number 2 arrived with my sister. Jenna came home for the holidays a week early. Usually, when Jenna returns from college, She is a whirlwind of energy, dumping her laundry on the floor and raiding the fridge. This time, she was quiet. She walked in with her shoulders hunched, dragging her suitcase like it contained lead. "Hey, Jen," I said, coming out of my office to hug her. She hugged me back, but her body was stiff. She pulled away quickly, avoiding my eyes. "Hey, Mar," she mumbled. Thanks for everything." "You okay?" I asked. "Just tired. Finals were brutal." Later that evening, I walked into the kitchen and found Jenna and Lorraine whispering near the stove. The moment I crossed the threshold, the conversation died. It was like someone had hit a mute button. Jenna looked at the floor. Lorraine looked at the ceiling. "What were you talking about?" I asked. "Just recipes," Lorraine chirped. Jenna was telling me about a vegan stuffing she wants to try. Jenna was a devout carnivore who had once cried because a restaurant ran out of bacon. The atmosphere in the house shifted from stressful to conspiratorial. I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. I would walk into a room, and the air would change. Conversations would stop. Smiles would become fixed and plastic. Then Aunt Carla started showing up more often. She brought with her a notebook and a pen, acting as the event planner for the grand Christmas Lorraine wanted. "We need to figure out the seating chart," Carla announced one afternoon, spreading her notes on the coffee table. "Lorraine, I put Mason next to you, obviously." I paused, a box of ornaments in my hand. "Who is Mason?" Carla and Lorraine exchanged a look. It was a split-second glance, measuring how much to reveal. "Oh, he is just a friend from the support group," Lorraine said smoothly. "A very nice man. He is going through a hard time, divorced. He is looking for a place to stay. Actually, I told him he could join us for dinner." "He is looking for a place to stay?" I repeated, the analyst in me flagging the data point. "Well, rental prices are so high," Carla interjected, her tone dripping with artificial sweetness. "Your mother was just thinking that, hypothetically, if the house had more room, or if someone eventually decided to move on to bigger and better things, Mason could rent the spare room. It would really help with the bills." "If someone moved on," I echoed. "We are just talking hypothetics." Lorraine laughed, but her eyes were cold. "Put the star on the tree. Marley, you are overthinking." I wasn't overthinking. I was gathering evidence. 2 days later, I was in the hallway, about to enter the kitchen to get a refill of water. I heard Carla's voice. "You have to be firm, Lorraine. He is ready to move in on the 1st of January. He has the deposit ready." "I know," my mother's voice replied, sounding giddy. "It will be so much easier. Mason can fix the gutters. Mason doesn't stare at me like a judge every time I buy a pair of shoes. Once Marley moves out, the vibe will be so much better. I just need her to clear the room." "Does she suspect?" Carla asked. "No. She is too busy playing the martyr to notice she is being fired." I stepped back from the door, my heart hammering against my ribs. Fired. She talked about her daughter like an unsatisfactory employee. And Mason, this stranger, was the new hire. They had lined up my replacement before they even handed me the termination notice. I retreated to my room and locked the door. I needed to know how deep the rot went. I started digging through the physical evidence in the house. I waited until Lorraine went out with Carla for planning supplies. I went into her bedroom. In the corner sat a new massage chair. It was black leather, massive, and looked expensive. Lorraine had told me she won it in a raffle at the community center. I knelt down and looked under the base. Taped to the bottom was a plastic pouch containing the warranty and the purchase order. I slid the paper out. Furniture World. Financing agreement. Customer name, Marley Rhodes. Social security number, XXXXX. Item, deluxe shiatsu chair. Terms, 24 monthly payments of $80. I sat back on my heels, holding the paper. She hadn't won a raffle. She had opened a line of credit in my name. I went to the living room, the 65-inch television mounted on the wall. I checked the back of the manual in the drawer. Another financing agreement. Another signature that looked like mine but wasn't. This wasn't just mooching. This was fraud. Systemic, calculated financial abuse. I went back to my room and logged onto my credit report. I should have done it months ago. There they were, the inquiries, the new accounts, a store card for a home goods retailer, a line of credit at an electronics store. She was leveraging my credit score to feather her nest before she kicked me out of it. She was building a comfortable life for herself and this Mason character, funded by the debt she was hanging around my neck. I printed every page. I put them in a folder. I didn't scream. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed the final piece of the puzzle. I needed to know the timeline. Despite the rage simmering in my veins, I continued the performance. I was the good daughter. I bought the 20-pound turkey. I bought the expensive wine. I wrapped gifts for Jenna. A pair of noise-canceling headphones she had asked for. I wrapped a cashmere scarf for Lorraine. It was a surreal experience, preparing a celebration for people who were plotting my execution. I felt like a prisoner on death row being asked to cater their own last meal. I heard Lorraine on the phone constantly. She would lower her voice when I entered the room, but I caught snippets. "She is just so erratic lately," Lorraine would whisper into the receiver. "I think the job is getting to her. She snaps at me for no reason. I honestly think she wants to leave, but she is too proud to admit it. I'm just trying to help her let go." She was planting the seeds. She was crafting the narrative so that when the explosion happened, the family would nod and say, "Yes, Lorraine told us Marley was having a breakdown." Christmas Eve arrived. The house was spotless. The tree was magnificent, towering over the living room, loaded with lights. The smell of pine and cinnamon masked the rot beneath the floorboards. I was in the kitchen, prepping the vegetables for the next day. Jenna had left her phone on the counter while she went to the bathroom. The screen lit up with a text message. I glanced at it. I couldn't help it. It was from a contact named Carla. "She is going to tell her tomorrow. Just don't freak out. Stay calm and let your mom handle it. It is for the best." I stared at the glowing screen until it went black. Tomorrow. Christmas Day, the deadline. They weren't just going to ask me to leave. They were going to do it on Christmas, presumably to maximize the drama, or perhaps because they knew I wouldn't cause a scene with the whole family watching. They were banking on my decorum. They were counting on the fact that Marley Rhodes never makes a scene. I looked at the turkey sitting in the brine bucket. I looked at the pile of potatoes waiting to be peeled. I picked up the peeler. My hand was steady. "Okay," I whispered to the empty kitchen. "If you want a show, I will give you a show." Jenna walked back in, grabbing her phone. She looked at me, guilt flashing across her face like a strobe light. "You okay, Mar?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Never better," I said, slicing into a potato with a sharp, clean cut. "I am just really looking forward to dinner tomorrow. I have a feeling it is going to be unforgettable." Jenna swallowed hard and hurried out of the room. I stood there, listening to the wind howl outside, and smiled. They thought they were ambushing me. They didn't know I had already read the battle plan, and I had just decided to change the venue of the trial from a private conversation to a public hearing, to understand the full weight of the silence that followed my mother's eviction notice. You have to understand the acoustics of the dining room. It was a room designed for laughter and clinking glasses, but in that moment, it amplified the sound of betrayal until it was deafening. The gravy I had spilled was slowly cooling on the tablecloth, forming a congealed brown skin. It was the only thing moving in the room. Lorraine sat with her hands clasped in front of her, a pose of pious reluctance. She refused to look me in the eye. Instead, she focused on the centerpiece, a wreath of holly and pine cones that I had bought at the garden center 3 days ago for $45. "Really?" I had asked. Lorraine cleared her throat. It was a delicate, performative sound. "It is not a punishment. Marley, please don't take it that way. It is just, well, lately, the energy in this house has been very heavy. Can you deny that?" I stared at her. "Heavy?" "Yes, heavy," she insisted, finally risking a glance at my chin, though not my eyes. "You are always so stressed. You bring that corporate anxiety home with you. It permeates the walls. I feel like I have to tiptoe around you. It is affecting my health. My blood pressure has been up all week. The irony was so sharp I could taste it like metal. The corporate anxiety she loathed was the direct result of working overtime to pay for the roof over her head. The stress she felt was the presence of a witness to her financial crimes. Carla chimed in, leaning forward with a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. Your mother is right, sweetie. It is not natural for a girl your age to be playing house with her mother. You need to be out there dating, traveling, living your life. You need your own space. We are doing this for you, really. It is a push out of the nest. It was a masterclass in rewriting history. They were framing my eviction as an act of maternal love. They were kicking me out for my own good. I see, I said, my voice eerily calm. So this is about my independence. Exactly, Lorraine breathed, looking relieved that I wasn't screaming. True independence, standing on your own 2 feet. I picked up my wine glass. I swirled the liquid, watching the red legs run down the side. And the mortgage? I asked. Who is going to pay the $2,450 due on the 1st of January? And the heating bill? And the insurance? The air in the room shifted. Jenna flinched visibly. She grabbed her water glass and drank deeply, her knuckles white. She knew exactly who was going to pay, and the guilt was eating her alive from the inside out. Lorraine waved a hand, a gesture of airy dismissal. Oh, don't you worry about that. I have made arrangements. God provides. Marley, I have sorted some things out. She didn't mention Mason. She didn't mention the renter she had lined up to take my room before my body was even cold. She didn't mention the credit cards she had maxed out in my name that gave her a temporary buffer. She just smiled that vague, beatific smile of a woman who believes her own lies. Arrangements, I repeated. Yes, Carla said firmly. Your mother is more capable than you give her credit for. She managed this house long before you came back. I looked at Jenna. My sister was staring at me with red, watery eyes. She gave a tiny, almost imperceptible shake of her head. It was a warning. Don't ask. Don't fight. Just go. She looked terrified, caught between the sister who supported her and the mother who manipulated her. I realized then that I was the last person to know. This scene had been rehearsed. Lorraine and Carla had likely discussed it over that bottle of wine at the vineyard. Jenna had been briefed. I was not a participant in this family meeting. I was the subject of it. The dinner I had paid for, cooked, and served was merely the stage they had rented to fire me. A sudden, intense exhaustion washed over me. I could have fought. I could have pulled out my phone and shown them the spreadsheet. I could have mentioned the secret loan, the massage chair, the hidden receipts. I could have burned the holiday to the ground right there at the table. But I didn't, because looking at their faces, Lorraine's defensive smugness, Carla's predatory glee, Jenna's cowardice, I realized they weren't worth the energy of an explosion. I pushed my chair back. The sound was loud in the quiet room. I stood up. I smoothed the front of my dress. Well, I said, if you have made arrangements, then I suppose my work here is done. Lorraine looked up, surprised by my surrender. Marley, you don't have to leave right this second. Finish your turkey. We can discuss the timeline. No, I said softly. I think I have lost my appetite. Merry Christmas. Mom, Aunt Carla, Jenna. I turned and walked out of the dining room. I didn't stomp. I didn't slam the door. I walked with the measured pace of a professional leaving a meeting that had concluded. As I climbed the stairs, I heard the silence below break. See, Carla's voice carried up the stairwell. I told you she would take it well. She is probably relieved. Pass the potatoes, would you? Lorraine said. They resumed eating. They were eating the food I bought, celebrating my departure. I entered my bedroom, my room for perhaps one more night, and closed the door. I turned the lock. It was a flimsy privacy lock, easily picked, but it made me feel slightly safer. I didn't cry. I expected to. I waited for the tears to come, for the heartbreak of being rejected by my own mother to buckle my knees. But it didn't come. Instead, I felt a cold, hard clarity. It was the same feeling I got when I isolated a virus in a server. The problem was identified. The solution was removal. I pulled my suitcase out from under the bed. I zipped it open. I started packing. I didn't pack like I had when I moved in, with hope and hesitation. I packed with precision. I folded my sweaters. I took my blazer off the hanger. Every item I placed in the suitcase felt like I was putting down a weight I had been carrying. The mortgage payment? Not my problem. The leaking faucet in the bathroom? Not my problem. Lorraine's loneliness? Not my problem. I cleared the closet. I cleared the dresser. I was erasing myself from the house of Rhodes. Then, I turned to the old oak desk in the corner. It had been my father's desk. When I moved back in, I had used it for storage, keeping old files and paperwork there. I needed to make sure I didn't leave anything sensitive behind. I knew Lorraine would scavenge through my things the moment I was gone, looking for anything of value or anything she could use against me. I pulled open the bottom drawer. It was stuck, jammed with old manila folders. I gave it a hard yank, and it rattled open. I started sifting through the papers, my birth certificate, my passport, old tax returns. At the very bottom of the stack, under a pile of Dad's old instruction manuals for appliances we no longer owned, was a thick blue envelope. It was dusty. I recognized the handwriting on the front. Deed and title, Rhodes. It was Dad's blocky, all-caps script. I frowned. I assumed Lorraine had the original deed in her safe downstairs. Why was this copy here? I opened the envelope. Inside was a photocopy of the property deed, dated 5 years ago. I scanned the legalese, my eyes skimming over the property description, the lot number, the boundaries. Then I reached the section on ownership. Grantee, Frank Rhodes and Lorraine Rhodes. But there was an addendum stapled to the back, a quitclaim deed, dated 3 months before my father died. I sat down on the edge of the bed, my hands trembling for the first time that night. I read the document 3 times to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. In the months before his heart attack, unbeknownst to me and evidently unbeknownst to Lorraine, my father had altered the title. He had transferred his 50% interest in the property not to his wife, but to a trust. The Frank Rhodes Family Trust. And when I turned the page to see the beneficiaries of the trust, I saw 2 names listed as co-trustees upon his death. Lorraine Rhodes, Marley Rhodes. I stared at the paper. My father hadn't just trusted me to take care of them financially. He had given me the legal weapon to ensure the house couldn't be sold or refinanced without my signature. Lorraine thought she owned the house. She thought she was the sole queen of this crumbling castle. She thought I was just a tenant she could evict at will. She was wrong. I wasn't a tenant. I was a 50% owner of the roof over her head. I looked at the date on the photocopy. It was signed and notarized. Why hadn't the lawyer mentioned this? Then I remembered. Dad's lawyer had retired a month after the funeral, and the files were transferred. Lorraine had likely ignored the mail from the firm, just like she ignored everything else, or she had filed it away without understanding the legal jargon, assuming it was just standard probate paperwork. I carefully folded the document and placed it inside my laptop bag, right next to my hard drive. Downstairs, I heard laughter. Lorraine was laughing at something Carla said. It was a loud, boisterous sound, fueled by wine and the relief of getting rid of me. I stood up and zipped my bag shut. They thought they had won. They thought they had successfully amputated the limb that was dragging them down. They had no idea that they hadn't just kicked out a daughter. They had declared war on the landlord. I walked to the window and looked out at the snow falling on the driveway I had paid to have shoveled. "Okay, Mom," I whispered to the glass. "You want me to move out? I will move out, but when I come back, I won't be knocking." The snow was falling in thick, heavy sheets when I finally hauled my suitcase down the stairs. The house was silent, save for the rhythmic, wet snoring emanating from the living room. I paused at the bottom of the steps and looked in. Lorraine was passed out on the beige sofa, her mouth slightly open, a half-empty bottle of Pinot Grigio resting precariously on the floor near her hand. The television was still on, playing a loop of a fireplace burning. the crackling sound of the digital fire mocking the cold reality of the room. Aunt Carla had left. Jenna was likely upstairs, hiding in her room with her noise-canceling headphones, trying to drown out the guilt. I didn't wake my mother. I didn't write a note. I simply gripped the handle of my luggage and walked to the front door. Stepping outside was a shock to the system. The wind was biting, cutting through my coat, but the air was clean. It didn't smell like roast turkey or expensive candles or lies. It smelled like ice and pine. I dragged my suitcase across the driveway I had paid to have paved 3 months ago. The wheels struggled in the fresh powder, leaving 2 long parallel tracks behind me. I stopped at my car, unlocked it, and threw my life into the trunk. I looked back at the house one last time. The windows were dark eyes staring back at me. It wasn't a home anymore. It was just a structure, a collection of wood and drywall where I had been methodically dismantled for a year. I got into the driver's seat, turned the key, and backed out without letting myself feel a single pang of regret. I didn't go far. I drove to the edge of town, to a place called the Evergreen Lodge. It was a single-story motel with a flickering neon sign that buzzed with an electrical hum. It was the kind of place where people stayed when they were in transit, or when they had nowhere else to go. The night clerk, a man with tired eyes and a name tag that read Earl, didn't ask questions. I paid for a week up front, $420, and took the key to room 12. The room smelled of lemon disinfectant and old carpet. The bedspread was a floral pattern from the 90s, and the heating unit under the window rattled like a dying engine. But when I locked the door and sat on the edge of the stiff mattress, I realized something profound. It was quiet. There was no sighing. There were no passive-aggressive comments about how I was typing too loudly. There was no one waiting for me to fix a printer or pay a bill. The silence was absolute. I lay back, staring at the water stain on the ceiling, and for the first time in 12 months, I slept without grinding my teeth. The next morning, the silence continued. I woke up at 8 o'clock. My hand instinctively reached for my phone, my body bracing for the inevitable barrage of texts. Where are you? We are worried. How could you do this? The screen was blank. I refreshed my messages. Nothing. I checked my email. Nothing from family. Just a few automated notifications from work and a newsletter from a tech blog. It was almost impressive. I had walked out on Christmas night, disappearing into a blizzard, and neither my mother nor my aunt had reached out to check if I was alive. It was the final confirmation of the transaction. You don't call the ATM when it leaves the lobby. You just look for another bank. I spent the day working from the small, wobbly desk in the corner of the room. I routed my connection through a VPN, securing my digital footprint. The separation between Marley the daughter and Marley the professional was complete. By the 3rd day, the silence broke. My phone vibrated with a text from Jenna. Mom is telling everyone you exploded at dinner. She told Aunt Susan and Grandma that you started screaming about money and threw the turkey on the floor and then stormed out, leaving her with nothing. She is saying she is afraid of your instability. I stared at the text, threw the turkey on the floor. The image was so absurd, so violently unlike me, that I almost laughed. But the laughter died in my throat. This was the narrative. Lorraine was preemptively destroying my credibility. If I tried to tell the truth later, it would look like the ravings of the unstable daughter she had already warned everyone about. Okay, I said aloud to the empty motel room. If we are telling stories, let's make sure we have the citations. I opened my laptop. It was time to stop looking at the surface-level damage and conduct a deep forensic audit. I had the deed to the house in my bag, which gave me leverage, but I needed to know the full extent of the financial infection. I logged into a credit monitoring service that offered more granular detail than the free reports. I paid the $29 subscription fee and waited for the report to generate. The progress bar spun, analyzing accounts, verifying identity. When the report loaded, the blood drained from my face. I knew about the massage chair. I knew about the loan I had received the letter for, but there was more. There was a credit card issued by a major lender, a card with a $10,000 limit, opened 6 months ago, The balance was currently $8,432. I clicked on the transaction history: Nordstrom, Sephora, the Golden Lotus Spa, a local jewelry store. I picked up my phone and dialed the fraud department of the bank that issued the card. I put the phone on speaker and set it on the desk, opening a fresh notepad. "This is Marley Rhodes," I told the representative after navigating the automated menu. "I am looking at a credit card on my report, ending in 4599. I did not open this account." "One moment, Ms. Rhodes," the agent said. "Let me pull up the file." There was the sound of typing. "Okay, I see the account was opened on June 12th. The application was submitted online." "How was the identity verified?" I asked. My voice was calm, professional. This was just data. "We used a two-step verification," the agent explained. "We verified the Social Security number, date of birth, and we performed a phone verification calling the home number on file to confirm the applicant's intent." "The home number," I repeated. "Was it a landline ending in 3042? "Yes, that is correct." I closed my eyes. That was the house landline. The landline I paid for. Lorraine had been sitting in the kitchen, perhaps sipping coffee, waiting for the bank to call. She had picked up the phone, pretended to be me, and authorized the account. "And the email address?" I asked. "It is listed as Marley, Rhodes88@yahoo.com. "I don't have a Yahoo account," I said. "And I was born in 97, not 88. "I see," the agent said, their tone shifting to one of concern. "That is a red flag." "I would like to freeze this account immediately and flag it for fraud," I said. "We can do that, but Ms. Rhodes, since the verification was done through a number associated with your residence, we will need a police report to fully clear the debt." "You will have it," I promised. I hung up. I didn't stop there. I went further down the report. Under collections, there was a flagged account for $350. It was small, easy to miss. Valley View Urgent Care. Date of service, August 3rd. I frowned. I hadn't been to urgent care in August. I was healthy. I clicked on the details. The service description code was for a cortisone injection, joint, a hip. My mother's sciatica. Lorraine had gone to the doctor for her back pain. When they asked for insurance or payment, she must have given them my information, or perhaps she just filled out the forms with my name and social, claiming she forgot her ID, counting on the small-town receptionist not to check too closely. She had used my identity to treat her back pain. I sat back in the creaky motel chair. This wasn't just desperation. This was a systematic usurpation of my existence. Lorraine didn't just want my money. She felt entitled to my name. She saw no boundary between herself and me. In her mind, I was an extension of her, a resource to be harvested. Identity theft is a felony. In the state of Colorado, identity theft involving amounts over $2,000 is a Class 4 felony. The credit card alone put her well over that threshold. I looked at the phone. I could call her. I could scream. I could demand she pay it back. But I knew exactly how that conversation would go. She would cry. She would say she did it for the family. She would say she intended to pay it back. She would gaslight me until I felt guilty for catching her. Then she would tell Jenna and Carla that I was harassing her. No, I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of an emotional reaction. I started a new folder on my laptop. I named it Case File, Rhodes vs. Rhodes. I downloaded the credit card statements. I took screenshots of the fraudulent email address she had created, likely easy to trace back to the IP address of the house I paid for. I downloaded the collection notice from the urgent care. I organized everything chronologically. Exhibit A, the quitclaim deed proving my ownership. Exhibit B, the unauthorized personal loan. Exhibit C, the fraudulent credit card application. Exhibit D, the medical identity theft. I worked for hours. The sun went down, casting long shadows across the motel parking lot. The neon sign outside buzzed to life, painting my room in intermittent stripes of red light. I wasn't a daughter anymore. I wasn't a roommate. I was a cybersecurity analyst building a case against a malicious actor who had breached my firewall. When I was finished, I had a PDF file that was 40 pages long. It was undeniable. It was cold, hard, mathematical proof that Lorraine Rhodes was not a victim of a cruel daughter, but a predator who had been feeding on her own child. I looked at the stack of digital evidence. A heaviness settled in my chest, a grief that was deep and ancient. I was about to destroy my mother. I was about to expose her to the family, to the law, to the world. But then I remembered the text from Jenna. She's telling everyone you exploded. She fired the first shot. She chose the battlefield. I picked up my phone and sent a single text to Jenna. Don't believe everything you hear, and don't sign anything she gives you. I am handling it. I closed my laptop. I lay down on the motel bed, the red neon light washing over my face. I was alone in a cheap room with a strange smell, but for the first time in my life, I wasn't confused about who the villain was. I closed my eyes and prepared for the trial that was to come. I wasn't going to negotiate for the sake of peace anymore. I was going to litigate for the sake of truth. The following 48 hours were not spent in mourning. They were spent in construction. I turned my cramped room at the Evergreen Lodge into a command center. The wobbly desk was covered in stacks of paper, my laptop humming in the center like a reactor core. I was treating the destruction of my relationship with my mother exactly like I treated a massive security breach at Northbridge Dynamics. You do not react with emotion. You react with documentation. I built a master timeline. I started from day 0, the day I broke my lease in Riverbend. I pulled the bank statement showing the penalty fee of $3,200. Then, I overlaid the date I moved in. I marked every single mortgage payment, every utility transfer, every grocery run. I cross-referenced this with Lorraine's social media activity. It was a damning juxtaposition. September 12th. I paid an overdue water bill of $280 to prevent a shutoff. September 13th. Lorraine posted a photo of a new designer handbag with the caption, "Treating myself because self-care is sacred." The math was brutal. It was irrefutable. But the cornerstone of my case was the blue envelope I had salvaged from Dad's desk. I needed to digitize it. I used a scanning app on my phone to capture high-resolution images of the deed and the trust documents. Then, I remembered something. My father was a man of redundancy. He never did anything important without a digital paper trail. I logged into an old cloud storage account we used to share for family photos. I guessed the password on the second try. It was the name of his first dog followed by my birth year. There it was, a folder named House Legal. Inside was a PDF of an email he had sent to his attorney 3 years ago. Subject: Protecting Marley. Body: Jim. I want to make sure that if anything happens to me, Lorraine cannot sell the house out from under the girls. She is not good with money. Please ensure Marley has veto power on any sale or refinancing. I read the email with a lump in my throat. He had known. He had seen the train wreck coming years before it happened, and he had tried to build a guardrail from the grave. Lorraine had ignored it, or perhaps she simply didn't understand it, assuming that being the widow gave her absolute power. I needed a second opinion. I didn't want to use anyone in Maple Ridge. Small towns talk, and I needed silence. I found a property lawyer in a town 40 miles away, a man named Mr. Henderson. I paid his consultation fee of $200 over the phone and sent him the encrypted files. He called me back 2 hours later. "Ms. Rhodes," his voice was gravelly and serious, "I have reviewed the quitclaim deed and the trust structure. Your mother has no legal standing to evict you. In fact, by taking out a loan against the equity without your signature, if that is indeed what she did, she has committed mortgage fraud. You hold all the cards here. You can force a sale, or you can force her to buy you out, but she cannot kick you out." "Thank you," I said. "I am not looking to sue her yet. I just needed to know that I am not crazy." "You are not crazy," he assured me. "You are the victim of a very poorly executed coup." With the legal foundation secure, I turned to the human element. I needed a witness. I sent a text to Jenna. Video call. Now, alone. She answered on the first ring. She was in her dorm room. having fled the house earlier that morning. Her face was blotchy, her eyes swollen.
"Marley," she choked out. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know how to stop her."
"I am not asking you to stop her, Jen," I said, keeping my voice gentle but firm. "I am asking you to tell me the truth. Everything. No filters." Jenna took a deep breath, wiping her nose with her sleeve. "It is Mason, the guy she calls her friend. He is not just a friend. He is her boyfriend. He is 55. He drives a motorcycle, and he currently lives in a basement apartment he hates." "Go on," I said, my fingers flying across the keyboard, transcribing her words. "They have been planning this since October," Jenna confessed. "Mason convinced Mom that you were controlling the household. He told her that if you moved out, he would move in. He said he would pay $500 a month in rent, which is a joke. But Mom thinks it is a fortune. They want the master bedroom. They want the house to themselves. So she kicks out the daughter paying $2,500 a month for a boyfriend paying $500. I summarized. Economic suicide. She thinks you will keep paying," Jenna whispered, looking down at her hands. "She told Mason that you are guilt-prone. She thinks even if you leave, you will still cover the mortgage because you won't want me to lose my childhood home. She is banking on your conscience, Marley." I felt a cold flash of rage. They had weaponized my morality. "Jenna," I said, "I need to ask you something important. The dinner. Lorraine is telling people I threw the turkey. She is telling people I screamed and acted violent." Jenna's eyes widened. "That is a lie. You barely raised your voice. You were scary calm." "I know it is a lie, but it is her word against mine. Unless—" I paused, watching her face. Jenna bit her lip. She looked off camera, then reached for something on her desk. "I recorded it," she said softly. My heart stopped. "You what?" "I had my phone in my lap," Jenna explained, her voice trembling. "When Mom started giving you that look, you know the look, I just hit record on the voice memo app. I thought if things got bad, I might need to show Dad's sister or something. I didn't want you to look like the bad guy." "Send it to me," I said. "Right now." The audio file arrived a minute later. I played it. The quality was muffled, sensing the fabric of her jeans, but the voices were distinct. "Lorraine, you need to move out." Marley. Marley. "Really?" Lorraine. "It is not a punishment. You are just so heavy." Marley. "Okay, if you have made arrangements, then I suppose my work here is done." There was no screaming. There was no turkey hitting the floor. There was just the sound of a chair scraping back and my polite, icy exit. "You saved me, Jen," I said. "Thank you." Now I had the weapon. The question was how to deploy it. My first instinct was to post everything on Facebook, to scorch the earth, to tag Lorraine, tag Mason, tag the entire town. But that was messy. That was emotional. And it would give Lorraine the victim status she craved. The poor mother whose daughter was cyberbullying her. No, I needed a venue that respected hierarchy. I called my grandmother, Evelyn, my father's mother. She was 80 years old, sharp as a tack. And the only person Lorraine truly feared, Evelyn controlled the larger family trust, the one that might eventually leave Lorraine a small inheritance. "Grandma," I said when she answered, "I am not going to explain over the phone. I am sending you an email. It is a PDF. I need you to read it. It contains financial statements, legal documents, and a recording." "Is this about why your mother says you ran away?" Evelyn asked, her voice stern. "I didn't run away," I said. "I was evicted. Just read the file. Please." I sent the dossier. For 2 hours. There was silence. I paced the small motel room, checking the time. Had I overplayed my hand? Did she think I was petty? Then, my phone pinged. It was a text from Evelyn. "We are having a family meeting. Tonight, 7 o'clock. Zoom. I have invited Lorraine, Carla, and your uncles. Send me the link." I set up the meeting. I titled it Family Update. 30 minutes before the call. My phone lit up with a message from Aunt Carla. She had evidently been briefed by Evelyn. Carla, I can't believe you are doing this. Airing our dirty laundry to Evelyn? You are going to give her a heart attack. This is a private family matter. You are so dramatic. Just apologize to your mother and come home. She was trying to intercept me. She was terrified. Carla had been the cheerleader for this coup, and she knew that if Lorraine went down, she would be implicated as the accomplice. I didn't reply. I simply took a screenshot of her text and added it to the presentation deck I was preparing. 7 o'clock approached. I sat at the wobbly desk. I had put on a blazer over my t-shirt. I had brushed my hair. Behind me, the generic art of the motel room was visible, a stark contrast to the warm, cozy dining room Lorraine would be calling from. I looked at the screen. The Zoom interface was open. The start meeting button was glowing blue. On the other side of that digital connection, Lorraine was likely sitting with a glass of wine, rehearsing her tears, preparing to tell the story of her ungrateful, unstable daughter. She thought she was attending an intervention for me. She thought Grandma Evelyn was gathering the family to scold me into returning to my role as the financier. Lorraine had no idea that she wasn't walking into an intervention. She was walking into an arraignment. I placed my hand on the mouse. My pulse was steady. I wasn't angry anymore. I was efficient. Let's see who pays the bill tonight, I whispered. I clicked Start Meeting. The digital waiting room cleared, and suddenly, my laptop screen was populated by the faces of my family. It was a grid of judgment, a pixelated courtroom where the verdict had seemingly been decided before the gavel even banged. In the top left square sat Grandma Evelyn. She was sitting in her high-backed wing chair, her face illuminated by a harsh reading lamp. She looked like a magistrate, her expression unreadable behind her bifocals. In the center square, dominating the visual hierarchy, were Lorraine and Aunt Carla. They were squeezed together on the beige sofa in the living room I had just vacated. Lorraine was holding a tissue to her nose, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy. Carla had a protective arm around her sister's shoulders, staring into the camera with a look of righteous indignation. In the bottom right was Jenna, sitting in her dorm room. The lighting was dim, and she had her hood up. She looked terrified. Scattered around the periphery were 2 uncles and a cousin, people who rarely called but never missed a drama. They were the jury, mute and watchful. I think everyone is here, Evelyn said. Her voice was tinny through the laptop speakers, but it commanded instant silence. Lorraine, you wanted to speak first. Lorraine sniffed loudly. She looked directly into the camera lens, tears welling up on command. I want to say that I am not angry, Lorraine began, her voice trembling with practiced fragility. I am just heartbroken. You all know how hard it has been since Frank died. I have tried so hard to keep this family together, and to have Marley, to have her explode like that on Christmas, to throw the food, to scream at me after everything I have sacrificed. She paused to wipe a tear. Carla patted her shoulder vigorously. I know she is stressed, Lorraine continued, pivoting to the concerned mother angle. I know her job is demanding. I think she is having a breakdown. That is why she ran away to some motel. That is why she is posting these hurtful things online. I just want her to get help. I want my daughter back. I am willing to forgive the violence and the anger if she just comes home and gets treatment. It was a masterful performance. She had painted a picture of a saintly mother dealing with a mentally unstable, violent child. In any other context, I would have applauded the commitment to the role. I sat in my motel room, the red neon light from the sign outside flickering against the wall behind me. I kept my face neutral. I didn't roll my eyes. I didn't scoff. I waited. Is that all, Lorraine? Evelyn asked. Yes, Lorraine whispered. I just pray she listens. All right, Evelyn said. She adjusted her glasses. Marley, you have the floor. Thank you, Grandma, I said. My voice was calm, contrasting sharply with Lorraine's histrionics. I am not here to tell stories. I am not here to talk about my feelings. I just want us to look at the facts, because feelings can be faked, but math cannot. I moved my mouse to the bottom of the window. I am going to share my screen, I announced. The grid of faces shrank to the side, replaced by the spreadsheet I had spent the last 2 days perfecting. It was a stark, black and white grid of numbers. This is a ledger of every single expense for the house at Maple Ridge over the last 12 months. I explained. I highlighted the first column. The rows in green are payments made by me. The rows in red are payments made by Lorraine. The screen was a sea of green. Mortgage, $2,450 a month, paid by Marley. Electricity, average of $300 a month, paid by Marley. Water, gas, internet, insurance, paid by Marley. I scrolled down. The numbers blurred, but the color green remained dominant. Now, I said, let's look at the grocery expenses. I buy groceries, Lorraine interrupted, her voice shrill. I am always at the store. Let's zoom in on that, I said coolly. I expanded the groceries tab. Here's a purchase from Lorraine on February 3rd, $40 for wine and crackers. Here's a purchase from me on February 4th, $450 for meat, produce, and household staples. I pulled up a pie chart I had generated. It showed a massive blue slice and a tiny, almost invisible sliver of orange. I have covered 98% of the household operating costs for the last year, I stated. The idea that I am a financial burden, or that I was living off my mother, is statistically impossible. The silence on the call was heavy. The uncles were leaning closer to their screens. Money isn't everything, Carla snapped. Your mother provides the home. She provides the love. You can't put a price on that. You are right, Aunt Carla, I said. You can't put a price on a home, but you can put a price on fraud. I closed the spreadsheet and opened the next file, the credit report and the bank investigation letter. This, I said, circling the mouse cursor over the document, is a credit card application opened 6 months ago. The limit is $10,000. The current balance is over $8,000. Lorraine went pale. Her hand dropped from her nose. I didn't open this, I said. But someone did. The bank confirmed that the application was verified using the landline at the Maple Ridge house, a phone that only Lorraine uses. As I am at work during the day, the email address used for verification was a fake Yahoo account created on the house IP address. I switched to the next slide, the urgent care bill. And here is a medical collection for a cortisone shot for sciatica, a condition I do not have, but one my mother complains about daily. This service was billed to my name. That was a mistake, Lorraine cried out. She was sitting up straight now, the fragile widow act dropping. The receptionist must have mixed up our files. We have the same last name. And the credit card? I asked. Did the bank accidentally mix up a voice verification on a landline? Lorraine stammered. I needed to buy things for the house. For us. I was going to pay it back. You have so much money. Marley, you wouldn't even miss it. I was doing it to keep up appearances for you. So you admit you opened it? I asked. The trap snapped shut. Lorraine looked at Carla, desperate for a lifeline. Carla looked away, suddenly very interested in her own fingernails. That is a felony, Lorraine, Evelyn said. Her voice cut through the digital noise like a knife. Identity theft is a crime, against your own daughter. She was going to leave me, Lorraine sobbed, pivoting to hysteria. She was planning to leave me alone in that big house. I had to secure my future. I was scared. So you decided to kick her out? Evelyn asked. You told me Marley was violent. You told me she was dangerous. She is, Lorraine shrieked. You weren't there on Christmas. She threw the turkey. She screamed at me. She is unstable. Actually, Jenna spoke up. Everyone looked at the bottom right square. Jenna had pushed her hood back. She looked pale, but her jaw was set. Jenna, don't, Lorraine warned, her voice dropping to a low hiss. I have to, Mom, Jenna said. Her voice shook, but she didn't stop. Grandma, I sent you an audio file before the meeting. Did you get it? I did, Evelyn said. I would like to play it for the group. Evelyn held her phone up to her computer microphone. She pressed play. The recording was crackly, but clear enough. Lorraine. You need to move out. Marley. Silence. Marley. Really? Lorraine. It is not a punishment. You are just so heavy. Marley. Okay. If you have made arrangements, then I suppose my work here is done. Then, the sound of a chair scraping, footsteps walking away, no screaming, no crashing plates, just a polite, devastatingly calm exit. Evelyn stopped the playback. The silence that followed was suffocating. It was the sound of a narrative collapsing in real time. The uncles looked embarrassed. Carla looked like she wanted to teleport out of the room. Lorraine stared at the screen, her mouth opening and closing. The lie was so completely dismantled that she couldn't find a foothold. Lorraine whispered. I felt threatened. Her silence was threatening. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Enough, Evelyn said. Evelyn reached down beside her chair and picked up a piece of paper. It was the blue document I had scanned and sent her. Lorraine, Evelyn said, looking over the rim of her glasses. You seem to be under the impression that the house belongs to you. You seem to think you have the authority to evict Marley. Lorraine blinked. It is my house. Frank left it to me. No, Evelyn corrected her. He didn't. She held the document up to the camera. Frank knew you were bad with money, Lorraine. He knew you would spend every penny if left unchecked. Before he died, he transferred the title to a trust. You are a trustee, but so is Marley. Lorraine's eyes went wide. What? Marley owns 50% of that house, Evelyn declared, her voice ringing with authority. And there is a clause in the trust, right here on page 4, that states the property cannot be sold, refinanced, or altered without the written consent of both trustees. And furthermore, no beneficiary can be denied residence in the property as long as they contribute to the upkeep. Evelyn lowered the paper. So, she continued, not only did you steal Marley's identity to open credit cards, not only did you lie to the entire family about her behavior, but you also tried to illegally evict a co-owner from her own property, an owner, I might add, who has paid 98% of the bills. Lorraine looked at Carla. Did you know about this? I am not a lawyer. Lorraine, Carla stammered, distancing herself at light speed. I just thought, you said Frank left it all to you. He lied to me, Lorraine screamed, slamming her hand on the coffee table. Frank lied to me. He went behind my back. He protected his daughter, Evelyn countered sharply. And thank God he did. Lorraine slumped back into the sofa. The fight had gone out of her. She looked small, defeated, and exposed. The cozy living room no longer looked like her kingdom. It looked like a trap she had built for herself. Marley, Evelyn said, turning her attention to my square on the screen. You have proved your case. The family sees the truth now. Lorraine? Lorraine didn't look up. She was picking at a loose thread on the sofa cushion. Look at your daughter, Evelyn commanded. Lorraine slowly raised her eyes. They were filled with hate, fear, and a desperate kind of bargaining. I am sorry, Lorraine mumbled, the words sounding like they tasted like ash. I was just stressed. I made a mistake. It wasn't a mistake, Mom, I said softly. It was a plan. You planned it with Mason. You planned it with the bank. You planned it with the lies. Lorraine flinched at the mention of Mason. She realized I knew everything. Evelyn leaned forward. Lorraine, let me be very clear. This is not Marley making you look bad. This is not Marley attacking you. This is the consequence of what you did to her. And from this moment on, the family checkbook is closed to you. If you want money, you ask Marley, because apparently, she is the only Rhodes who knows how to manage it. Evelyn looked at me. Marley, what do you want to do? I looked at the screen. I saw my mother, broken and caught. I saw my sister, relieved. I saw my grandmother, handing me the gavel. I had the power now. I could move back in. I could kick her out. I could sell the house. I will let you know tomorrow, I said. I have one more calculation to run. I moved my mouse to the red button. Meeting adjourned, I said. And I clicked end call, plunging the room back into the quiet red glow of the motel neon, leaving them in the dark. The silence that followed the termination of the Zoom call was not empty. It was heavy with the weight of a shifted paradigm. My phone rang almost immediately. It was Grandma Evelyn. "Marley," she said, her voice softer than it had been during the tribunal. "You handled that with dignity. I am proud of you." "Thank you, Grandma," I replied, leaning back in the stiff motel chair. "I just wanted the truth on the record." "You have it," she said firmly. "Now, listen to me. I don't want you staying in that roadside motel another night. The sheets probably haven't been changed since the Reagan administration. You come to my house. I have the guest room ready. It was a kind offer, a year ago. I would have taken it. I would have traded one dependency for another, seeking shelter under the wing of a matriarch. But the woman who had walked out of the house on Christmas night was not the same woman who was sitting here now. I appreciate that, Grandma. Truly, I said. But I have made other arrangements. I put a deposit down this morning on a studio apartment in Silver Creek. It is small, and it is 40 minutes from the city, but it is mine. I need to be in a space that I own, in every sense of the word. Evelyn paused, and I could hear a smile in her voice. Good. You are more like your father than I realized. Go get your keys. The next morning, I met Mr. Henderson, the property lawyer, at a coffee shop halfway between Maple Ridge and Silver Creek. He slid a thick folder across the table. "You have a very strong hand, Ms. Rhodes," he said, taking a sip of black coffee. "With the trust documents and the evidence of fraud, you could force a partition sale. We could put the house on the market next week. You could take your 50% of the equity and walk away with a significant sum." I looked at the folder. Half the equity meant over $200,000. It was a life-changing amount of money. But then I thought about the cost. A forced sale would drag on for months. Lorraine would fight it. She would scream to every neighbor that I was making her homeless. The emotional tax would be higher than the financial gain. "I don't want the money," I said. "And I don't want the house. I want my name back." Mr. Henderson raised an eyebrow. "Explain." "I want a clean break," I told him. "I want off the deed. I want off the mortgage. I want my credit report scrubbed clean. And I want to ensure she can never use my social security number again." 2 days later, I returned to the house on Elm Street. The driveway was icy, but this time, I wasn't parking my car to stay. I was parking to close a deal. I walked up the path, flanked by Mr. Henderson on my left and Grandma Evelyn on my right. We were a phalanx of consequences. Lorraine opened the door. She looked terrible. She was wearing old sweatpants, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. There was no smell of roasting turkey today. The house smelled of stale air and anxiety. "Marley," she said, her voice cracking. She looked at Evelyn, then at the man in the suit. She stepped back, allowing us to enter. We sat at the dining room table. The stain from the gravy I had spilled on Christmas was gone, replaced by a pristine runner, but the ghost of that dinner still hung in the air. Lorraine sat opposite me. She looked small. Jenna was sitting on the stairs, watching through the banister, a silent witness. Mr. Henderson opened his briefcase and laid a document on the table. It was thick, bound in heavy paper. "This is a settlement agreement," Mr. Henderson stated professionally. "Ms. Rhodes, Marley, is agreeing to sign over her 50% interest in the Frank Rhodes Family Trust to you. Lorraine, this will make you the sole owner of the property." Lorraine's eyes lit up. She looked at me, confusion warring with relief. You are giving me the house?" "There are conditions," I said, cutting through her hope. "Condition 1," Mr. Henderson continued. "You will immediately use the home equity line of credit, which we know you have access to pay off the $8,432 on the fraudulent credit card standing in Marley's name. You will also pay the $350 to the urgent care clinic." Lorraine nodded quickly. Yes, I can do that. I will do that today. Condition 2, the lawyer went on. You will sign a confession of judgment regarding the identity theft. We will not file it with the police unless you miss a deadline or attempt to open any new accounts in Marley's name. It is an insurance policy. If you ever use her identity again, you go to jail. No family meetings, no warnings, jail. Lorraine flinched. She looked at Evelyn, looking for sympathy. Don't look at me, Evelyn said coldly. I read the draft. I approved it. And condition 3, I said, leaning forward. I want the login for the utility accounts, the internet, and the insurance. I am removing my payment information today. You have 48 hours to replace it with your own, or the lights go out. Lorraine looked down at the table. Marley, I don't know if I can afford all that right away. Mason is moving in, but his rent is only... That is not my problem, I said. The sentence felt delicious. Figure it out. Get a job, sell the designer handbag, or let Mason pay the electric bill. It is your house, Lorraine. It is your math to solve. Lorraine hesitated. She picked up the pen, her hand hovering over the paper. This feels so transactional. We are family. Can't we just agree to fix this without lawyers? It breaks my heart to sign something that threatens me with jail. She was trying one last time. She was trying to pull the mother card to soften the blow. Evelyn cleared her throat. It sounded like a gavel striking wood. Lorraine, Evelyn said, I updated my will this morning. Lorraine froze. If you do not sign this agreement, and if you do not honor every single syllable of it, the portion of my estate that was designated for you, and it is a substantial portion, will be redirected entirely to a charity for financial literacy. You will receive nothing, not a dime, not a candlestick. The color drained from Lorraine's face. She realized, for the first time, that the safety net she had always relied on, the generational wealth, the family's tendency to forgive and forget, was gone. She was standing on a cliff edge, and we were no longer holding the rope. She looked at the lawyer. She looked at the confession of judgment. She looked at Evelyn's stone-cold face. She signed. The scratch of the pen against the paper was the only sound in the room. It was the sound of a chain breaking. Mr. Henderson notarized the signature. He packed up his papers. I will file the deed transfer tomorrow. Ms. Rhodes, you are free and clear. I stood up. Thank you. I will wait in the car, Evelyn said, standing up and giving Lorraine one last, disappointed look. Marley, take your time. I watched them leave. It was just me and Lorraine in the hallway. I walked over to the door frame leading to the kitchen. I ran my fingers over the pencil marks. Marley, age 10. Marley, age 12. The wood was indented where my father had pressed the pencil hard. Lorraine watched me. I meant what I said about the memories, she whispered. I wanted to keep the house for the memories. You have the house, Mom, I said, turning to face her. You have the wood and the drywall and the pencil marks, but you don't have the people anymore. You traded the people for the things. I walked to the hall closet. I opened it. My father's old flannel jacket was hanging in the back. I buried my face in it for a second. The scent of sawdust and peppermint was faint now, fading with time. I didn't take it. I realized that taking the coat would just be holding on to a ghost. I needed to let him rest. I needed to let the past stay in the past. I closed the closet door. I picked up my bag. I walked to the front door. Lorraine followed me. She reached onto the side table and picked up a white bakery box. Marley, she said. She held the box out. I bought a cherry pie. From that place you like. I thought maybe, before you go, we could have a slice? Just to show no hard feelings? You could stay for an hour. We could talk about how to start over. I looked at the box. It was the white flag. It was the bribe. It was the exact same dynamic as the turkey dinner. Food used as a currency to buy compliance. She wanted to eat pie so she could tell herself that everything was fine, that she was still a good mother, that I had forgiven her. I looked her in the eye. No, Thank you, I said. But we need to start over, she pleaded, her voice rising in desperation. We need to rebuild. I smiled. It was a genuine smile this time, because I finally understood the architecture of my own life. I am starting over, Mom, I said. I am starting over today, just not here. I opened the door. The winter air rushed in, cold and cleansing. Goodbye, Lorraine, I said. I stepped out and closed the door. I didn't slam it. I simply clicked it shut. I didn't look through the peephole to see if she was crying. I didn't pause on the porch to reconsider. I walked to my car. The sun was beginning to set, painting the snow in shades of violet and gold. I got in and started the engine. I adjusted the rearview mirror, but instead of looking at the house, I angled it so I could see the road behind me. I pulled out of the driveway. I drove past the neighbors' houses, past the park where I learned to ride a bike, past the town limits of Maple Ridge. I drove toward Silver Creek. The road ahead was empty. The silence in the car was beautiful. It wasn't the silence of tension or the silence of suppression. It was the silence of a blank page. I thought about the key in my pocket. It was a single silver key to a 400-square-foot studio apartment. It opened a door to a room with no furniture, no memories, and no debts. As I merged onto the highway, the sun hitting the windshield, a single thought crystallized in my mind. Family is not a suicide pact. Love is not a debt you pay with your sanity. If a home requires you to burn yourself to keep others warm, it is not a home, it is an incinerator. And today, finally, I had walked out of the fire. I turned up the radio and drove toward the sunset, watching the miles tick away, putting distance between who I was told to be and who I was choosing to become. The story of Marley the victim ended back at that dining table. The story of Marley the free began the moment I put the key in the ignition. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. Are you listening on your commute, while cooking dinner, or maybe winding down for the night? Please let me know in the comments below so we can connect. If you enjoyed this journey of justice and boundaries, please make sure to subscribe to the Lila Revenge Stories channel. Hit that like button and smash the hype button to help this story reach more people who might need to hear it. Stay strong and protect your peace.